Hey, welcome to day 6, and this gorgeous thing here is the painting that we are going to be doing today. So it's a beautiful ocean sea kind of painting with a nice, most amazing sky. I love the combination of orange and paint grey, So let's have a look at the colors that we need for this one. So obviously transparent orange, paint grey, alizarin crimson, violet, and white gouache. Just those colors and you can create this beauty. All right, are you ready? Let's get started. All right, let us start. So we'll first quickly make the pencil sketch. The pencil sketch is going to be around 1/3 of the paper. So my pencil again, don't worry, we don't need a compass for this one. It's just that it's attached to the compass and I was very lazy enough to take out the pencil from that one. Okay. So there you go, that's our line. Maybe today, because our paintings are darker, you can have a denser line. All right, so that is literally the horizon line for our painting. But while we're painting, we don't need to be bothered about the horizon line in the beginning, because we're just going to go and, wet the whole of the paper, even the foreground region. So just go ahead and really apply water to the whole of the paper. My brush, I really need to change this one. It's like shedding so much hair. Okay, so anyways, go ahead, apply water multiple times. Remember the trick I mentioned the previous day where you have to make sure that your paper stays wet longer by applying the water, then letting it sink in, and then reapplying the water. You might want to do this trick if you find it really helpful and you live in an area where it is prone to having the paper dry out quickly. So here I've grabbed my cloth and I'm going to absorb all the excess water from the paper. There you go, that's all the excess water absorbed, and now we'll start painting the beautiful sky. Okay, so the first color that we are basically going to need and use is transparent orange, but we will need it to be denser, so pre-wet your palette if you need. I'm just running my brush along nicely, and I'm not going to mix on my palette because that just reduces the color according to me. So if ever I want a dense color, I usually pick up like that. Okay, and here this is how we're going to be starting. So there, just applying, and then we're going to come down over to here, and then as we come down, now we start to leave areas of white over to that right side. Okay, so here just coming down, and then again now I'll have my strokes go over like that. Okay, that's it for that part of the orange. Do not come below that. Then again here. Okay, now on to getting our orange more denser. So here you go, just grabbing that and adding nicely. Okay, and maybe a little along that side as well. All right, then now the next thing is we obviously need to create the shadow areas. So go ahead and put in a lot of the orange strokes to the bottom as well. Just start with enough. You don't need to mimic the exact same shapes, but it did leave a little bit of a line. That's not necessary though. The reason being it's water, so it's bound to move, it's bound to play around, and it's absolutely fine. Okay, then obviously the next color is paint gray, so you're gonna have to go with the paint gray. Okay, and you're gonna touch start at the very edge. This is what I mean by when the paint gray gets lighter, because we do not have an under painting color there, but that's okay for today because we don't want it to be extremely black, just a teeny tiny amount. Okay, and then this is what we're going to be adding. So some of the areas which is coinciding with the orange will definitely turn into a brown shade, but make sure you pick up dense black. Okay, because that brown shade will have a tint of green to it if you do not make it denser. So we do not want a green tint in our sky, do we? No, absolutely not. So here again, now we're going for the wet on wet technique and grabbing the paint gray and going to add all of the gray over to that side. Okay, we need to remove all the whites towards the left side. Did I say removing all the grays? Anyways, removing all the whites to the left side. Okay, cover it up completely. Okay, nicely cover it, the whole thing up. There you go. I've covered up the whole thing over to that left side. Okay, nicely done, right? Now, as we come towards the bottom, we're just gonna grab a little bit of purple, okay? Just a teeny tiny bit of that purple, and this is what we're gonna be mixing along there. So again, the purple shade will mix with the orange to create like a brownish shade, so that it's not a problem over there, okay? But we're not gonna be leaving it as this dense purple. I'm just starting with it, okay? So here at the base, where the land is joined by the water, it'll be purple, and then we need to go back with paint gray. But over on the water, you can have a lighter tone of paint gray, but you don't need to. There, that's the lighter tone of paint gray, maybe a bit more, and then also onto the purple region. Remember, I said that I do not want it to be dense purple color, but rather prefer it to be a very toned down version. Now, we've covered up the sky, we've covered up everything. This is going to lighten up very, very, very much. So that's why we need to now create the effect of clouds. So grabbing more of my paint gray, I'm going to drop in the color, and I'm going to create the shape of some nice cloud. Okay, like going to paint along the edges. Create some dense clouds. There you go. And again over on this side as well. So these will dry up and the clouds will start to show up. So see the area here, oops, I touched it and I picked up paint. Okay, see the area here, that is going to lighten up, and this is going to slightly darken over there. Okay, then I'm just going to grab a little bit of alizarin crimson, because, you know, some of the edges of the orange, I would like to give a very dense approach. So that's why just teeny tiny bit of the alizarin. You do not want too much, just little. And if your paper has dried, then by all means do not paint with the alizarin. I think that's what it is. If it's dried, don't go with the alizarin. Okay, my paper is somewhat still wet, which is why I'm taking the alizarin. But then also I do not like the dense alizarin that's popped up there, so I'm just grabbing my orange, but I'm making sure that my brush is in a dry zone, as in dry stroke. Okay, we want it to be making sure that it's a dry on wet stroke, otherwise you're going to ruin your painting. Okay, so see, just mixed it up, and now that red is really subtle. It's there, but very subtle. Okay, so that's what we've done. And also over to this side as well, we've lightened it up. Now we need to create, the bottom part is still wet, so now we need to create the shape of waves. Okay, so here, in order to create the shape of waves, grab in the paint gray and start to create like that. Okay, so what I just did is I pressed my brush and then I did like a wavy motion. Okay, and we want to do this in multiple ways. So here, I'm just gonna join that region together. And it's okay, you can go over to the orange areas as well. Okay, it's not going to make much of a sense now, and as you go further away, you want your lines to be smaller, so start using only the tip of your brush, and also not too smaller, because of perspective they'll be more straight. Okay, adding some nice wavy strokes onto this one as well. So this will make sense when we actually add in the form. Okay, so now just go with the flow and just add a lot of abstract kind of shapes there. And there you go. That's our background kind of done. Okay, I'm just moving my paint here because I see a little bit of a drop there. Can you see it in the camera? So I'm just softening that and flattening that out. I think it looks good. Now all we need is to kind of dry this up so that we can move on to the next layer. All right, there you go. It's completely dried up, and you see what I mean when I said it's going to dry up and become lighter. Look at this. It's not black anymore. When it's wet, it looks black. That is actually and unfortunately the property of watercolor, where if it dries up, then it dries 1 or 2 shades lighter. So what you see when it's wet is actually not the color that it's going to be when it dries up. Okay, so that's a little bit of an unfortunate case. Okay, all right, so now let's go ahead and put some things in the background. And in order to do that, I'm going to pick up the same violet that we used for the background, in fact, because now I have the horizon line there. I can see it on my paper, and I suppose you can see as well. See this line there? That's the line that I drew with the pencil. So then I'm just going to put in some mountain shape. Okay, so just something random, and then going to draw on the very top of the horizon line. I turn my hand because I am comfortable to draw the line in that manner. That's why. So here you go. Okay, there you go. And now to just fill it up. I mean, ideally you should be drawing the mountain like that, but because it's a flat line that I wanted to cover, that's why I painted it in the most absurd way that you can think of, which is really and honestly not ideal. Ideally, you should be painting mountains using your whole brush, like just like that, you know, using the entire brush. We did not do that. Okay, there you go. That's that mountain done. Now over to this side here, I want to paint like a dark rock there. So I'm just going to grab a little bit. I guess I'm going to do with the violet itself because the sky's got a lot of those colors. Okay, so this, grabbing violet, and I'm going to put like a large rocky surface there. So that part of the white is a bit covered. I didn't intend to have that white there at all, so that's why I removed it. Now, because of the light sources there, which means we need to have a shadow here. So the shadow, I'm going to add it with paint spray. So here, just grabbing my paint spray, make sure you touch the shadow with the rock as well. And then here I've just softened out the edges. Very important that you soften out the edges of your shadows. Okay, so see, just bring it and then softened out the edge of the shadow. Okay, just want to make the shadow denser at the very bottom, but then it gets softer towards the bottom. All right, now that rock is done, let's add just another totally background mountain there. And because it's background, but it's like in front of the other one, to give it a dwell level, now I'm grabbing paint spray and observe closely. Okay, so grabbing paint spray here, just gonna put like another rocky surface or a mountain here. And then I'm gonna paint on top of my horizon line again. Okay, where's my horizon line? That is absolutely not my horizon line. That is my horizon line. Okay, let me cover that up because it's paint gray. And see, now I'm using wet on dry method, and how the paint gray looks like black because the paper is dry and it's still not, the paper is dry and the paint is dense. It's only when there's water on the paper where the pigment spreads out more, so the particles disperse and it becomes lighter again. So now this is like 2 levels of mountain, isn't it? There's one at the back and there's one at the front at the level of the horizon, right? So that's that. Let's put in another kind of rocky area here, I would say. Then I'm gonna like create like a cliff edge to it perhaps. Okay, there, and I'm gonna paint that in, but I'm also going to like do a mixture, grabbing a little bit of paint gray, a little bit of violet, there, violet. So now this thing has a dwell color effect. Do you see that? Right, okay, a dwell color effect on that one. And then that also probably I would need to like create a front edge for that. It's like a land area right there. So you can grab your dense paint gray while you're doing this. It's almost done. Now the only thing left to do is to like kind of darken out the bottom part of our water. So just adding water, then I've just added paint gray, and then I'm softening out the base, okay, so that it looks like the water. Okay, so I'm bringing some of the paint down. It's absolutely fine. Okay, there, I think that's much better how it looks. Okay, because it's got that dark depth in there. Just spreading the paint to make sure that it's not too bad. Okay, there you go. Maybe we can grab in a little bit more paint gray and, you know, kind of add it towards that very end. Lots of lines and a little bit of a shadow effect again. Okay, so that gives it a little bit more shadow, especially to this land area there. Okay, there you go. So now let's dry this up and then we can finish off with the white strokes. Okay, all right, there you go. It's dried up. I know that it was not visible earlier, but now can you see the dual tone of the violet and the black here and the violet over here and how it's looking so nice? All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and paint in the form. So in order to paint the form, we're gonna use white paint. Okay, not entirely white paint though. We're gonna mix it with some other color. And you probably guessed it because you know already the list of colors that we are going to use for this painting. So here, just going to grab that. And then a little bit of lavender. So it's white mixed with lavender, of course. What else could it be, right? So then here, we're going to just like create some dry strokes and we're going to create the shape of the formy region. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just pressing my brush along and, you know, dragging it along the paper so that it creates like a random shapes. See that? Okay, and we want to do it in all of the areas. I think towards the right side, you can use more of the white because it's very, very light there and it's got lightest region there. And if you feel that there's too much water, just do it on dry your brush. Okay, so we want it to be like a semi-dry stroke. This is not completely the dry brush technique, but it's also not the wet on wet. So it's like I'm drying my brush, okay, and then I'm gonna go use to create the foamy effect, if you know what I mean. Okay, so we want to definitely create a lot of foam here where it's actually going and hitting the cliff region, but then you want it to be smaller because the cliff is a little bit further away than these waves over here. So you want to make them smaller, and then here it's just like probably hitting that little region there. So see, just teeny tiny strokes towards that region. Okay, just a lot of teeny tiny region. I've added a layer of lavender first and then over the top adding yellow. So that gives, did I say yellow? White. So that gives the foam a sense of dual nature, as in, see that? So then the lavender actually looks like the shadow part of the foam. Does that make any sense? It's really good, isn't it? Because you wouldn't expect, but then it looks like the shadow part of the foam itself. And then here, let's add in some nice foam again. So that's next to the water, next to the rocky region. And then again, as you would go further away, you would see lesser and lesser of the foam. So then stop and do not add too much. Decrease it as much as you can, okay? And then come back down where we will add more of it, okay? So here, the thing with this foam is that even this white paint, it's going to dry out into a lighter color because it's on a gray background, so that's not going to be really visible much, but that's okay. We want it to be lighter. We do not, it's a night sky, so it's not going to be that absolute white in color that you would expect, okay? So let it go. We don't want it to be that dense either. Okay, so here again, just going to give it a sense of dual color here. Okay, they're all gonna dry up, so don't worry. There. Anyways, that's a lot. You can even add like lots of small dots, I guess, okay, because it's not just lines. There will be dotted, you could even splatter, but I think the dots are more than fine, okay? And they're going to be a lot of, now I need to wash my brush because I need to get rid of the lavender on it, okay? Completely get rid of the lavender on it, and then I'm going to just grab the pure white. But let me also clean up the palette because as I was mixing, I dropped lavender into there, so I'm cleaning that as well because I need pure white at this moment. Okay, I need the pure white. You can also grab fresh from your tube if you want, okay? Because now we're just going to like add in some nice white areas under there straight, but these would be the reflection part of the white region that we added into the sky, okay? We could essentially have left the area white rather than do this, but then that's okay. This is more fun, I would say. Okay, so there you go. That many of the things are almost done. I'm just trying to see if I can bring a bit more vibrancy to the white because I felt that it's like really faded. So that's the problem with the lavender. It can fade a bit really quickly. Okay, so there you go. That's more. And I think that dense white didn't work. So I probably need to grab extra fresh white to do this process because the other white is almost dried up. So I would need the good consistency to do this process. Okay, I think that should do. Okay, I think that's enough. I'm more than happy with the way that has turned out. So now I don't need to dry up. I was going to say I'm going to dry this up, but it's already dry because the edges, there's just a few white strokes that we added. So let's go ahead and remove the tape. I just absolutely love the sky though. That orange and the paint gray, the combination is just amazing, wouldn't you say? Okay. And here you go. Here's the finished painting. Look at that sky. Oh my god. So here you go. It's amazing, isn't it? So I hope you enjoyed painting this with me, and thank you so much for joining me today.